The media onslaught against the Trump administration is intensifying. And on campus, there are some people that are getting a little impatient. They say, I want more wins from President Trump. I want more wins. I'm not that sympathetic to that, to be perfectly honest, because what President Trump did in even the first week is more than what some presidents have done in 4 years. And it's not even yet been 100 days. The kind of impatient, let's just say, attitude doesn't resonate with me. And it's also not rooted at all in if you are watching the daily news cycle. We talked about how yesterday President Trump is trying to do the largest deportation effort in American history. He's being enjoined. We're working through how to solve that. He's trying to solve the Russian-Ukrainian war, but we are drill, baby, drill. The southern border is completely secured. We're going to get a massive tax bill. We have the executive order on no men and female sports. We have the executive order on no chemical castration of children. 11% more voters are saying the United States is on the right track since January. It's big. And just wait until the economy stabilizes, we get our tax bill passed. And there's something that happened yesterday in the Oval Office that received almost zero media coverage. And to be honest, very few people in the conservative movement have been covering this. Not enough people in conservative media have been taking the time to say, time out and pause. This is a massive victory. It's an act of courage by President Trump, who's now going at the very core. He's going at the life source of DEI. President Trump is going right at the baseline. He's going at step one of how we started to see the slipping of excellence, the death of meritocracy, and the elevation of mediocrity. President Trump is addressing root causes. This, of course, is something called disparate impact. President Trump signed an executive order called Restoring Equality of Opportunity and Meritocracy. If you do not know about disparate impact, you should take out your pen. You should listen carefully. If you're in the car right now, listening to us on the Salem Radio Network, you're watching on Real America's Voice, you're going to learn something. You're going to learn that there was something that was embedded, encoded into the fibers of almost every single one of our laws and our hiring practices that you might not know about. President Trump signed an executive order yesterday repealing 2 regulations that have existed since LBJ and Nixon. That means Ronald Reagan didn't touch this, George H.W. Bush didn't touch this, George W. Bush didn't touch this, and even in the first Trump administration, we didn't get to this. But that's why exile was good to us. That's why those 4 years of us not having power, we were able to study, go deeper, and say, what is the root cause here? What was the first mistake? What was the original sin? And disparate impact is the original sin of the DEI monstrosity. The government will eliminate the use of enforcement of so-called disparate impact liability. But what is that disparate impact? What's the big deal, Charlie? Come on, show me the real wins. No. You should be thanking the Lord about the significance of the profundity here. It's the sort of thing that few people have heard of, but has completely remade American life over the last 50 years. Disparate impact is a legal doctrine that holds that any rule, any policy, or requirement can be held to be illegal discrimination if it has a disparate impact on 2 different groups. So, for example, in 1971, there was a Supreme Court case, Griggs v. Duke Power Company. Duke Power was sued because for people to get certain jobs at the company, they required them to either have a high school diploma or pass an aptitude test. Black applicants were less likely to have a diploma, and they didn't do as well on the aptitude test. The Supreme Court ruled that Duke's job requirements were, quote, were not justified by business necessity. And so they were illegally discriminatory, and thus the doctrine of disparate impact was born. You could probably guess why this doctrine is so incredibly pernicious. Literally every standard imaginable has some sort of disparate impact against a group. Nobody on this planet has ever designed a test or a standard that men, women, blacks, whites, Asians, Hispanics, Catholic, Jews, gays, straights do so equally well. The very idea is an absurd fantasy. You're going to have different outcomes. But what disparate impact does is it says the test itself is wrong. It is a loophole that you could drive a semi-truck through. It's a little sliver. You say, oh, disparate impact. Oh, what's the big deal here? No. This has been exploited by DEI actors for the last 30 years. So what we have is a world where the federal government can go after any company, any school or any state or any local government that they want to for discrimination using the Civil Rights Act. by deciding that whatever their hiring standards are, they don't meet a business necessity. So who decides the necessity? Well, not business owners, not entrepreneurs, not the people that actually own the property. No. Instead, federal bureaucrats and judges decide it. Since the feds can go after anyone for anything, everyone now lives in fear. People have tried to come after Turning Point USA unsuccessfully for disparate impact. Oh, we don't like your criteria for this. And they try to do some EEOC complaint. Thankfully, we won all of those complaints. And this is where so much of DEI comes in. So because you're so afraid of big government coming in, the leviathan of the anti-racist state, they try to impress the government, show how committed we are to diversity. Companies know that they can be attacked at any time on the grounds of disparate impact. So they try to look good by having a massive DEI department. Don't come after us, go after some of the other companies. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. This system has imposed a massive regulatory and efficiency burden on the American economy. DEI, in my opinion, is the greatest silent regulation on American prosperity. DEI, affirmative action, and disparate impact. That is the evil trinity. That is the sinister triad, the three horsemen of the death of merit. DEI, affirmative action, and disparate impact. Most people don't even know what those words would mean. Maybe affirmative action 5 or 10 years ago, but it's been enveloping businesses, entrepreneurs for quite some time. Companies are terrified of a disparate impact complaint. The system has imposed a massive regulatory and efficiency burden. It's turned into a war against merit and against freedom. We've basically made it illegal for companies to simply try to hire the most talented people for a given job. And don't be surprised, our companies are not as innovative as they used to be. This needed to change, and now the Trump administration is finally changing it. To go deeper, we've actually seen a decline in standards and performance. In 2022, the Los Angeles Unified School District removed requirements for algebra proficiency. Why? Because they said black students don't do as well in algebra. So, after they removed the algebra proficiency, black students got even worse at algebra, showing that lowering standards didn't actually improve outcomes. Disparate impact penalizes neutral and effective criteria. The use of standardized testing in New York City schools was curtailed due to racial disparities. Yet these schools produced more national merit scholars per capita than other state, highlighting that merit-based selection correlates with excellence. This is how they're getting rid of the SAT. They're getting rid of the ACT. Here is the best way that I can summarize it. Effectively, you end up, disparate impact means punishing the test when students fail, not punishing the students when they fail the test. Instead, they're trying to rework the test, not try to improve the excellence or the merit of the applicant or the future student or worker at your company. There's a lot of talk about what's happening in Israel right now. Hostages being released, terrorists resurfacing, Gaza plans, and so on. But there's one thing we tend to overlook: the people of Israel. The war has taken a huge physical and emotional toll on the Jewish people. And that's why I want you to know about the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. And I want you to support the important work they do. IFCJ is on the ground throughout Israel, providing food and life-saving aid to the sick and elderly, even released hostages and their families. Join with me and visit ifcj.org/learn more. If disparate impact were applied to the NBA, the league would be even in further crisis. Not because of poor performance, but because, you think about it, like, who would actually end up having to be represented? Black men only make up 13% of the U.S. population, but they account for over 70% of NBA players. Well, that's disparate impact. Why is it that black Americans are able to do so well to go into the NBA? You see, because the NBA is an excellence-driven organization. Should the NBA institute racial quotas on the court? Should they have to bench players based on the color of their skin to achieve equity? Should they replace merit with a lottery? You can start to see how destructive disparate impact is just in that singular example. Imagine a judge saying that height isn't a job necessity in the NBA. Phenomenal example, Blake. That's exactly right. The lunacy of disparate impact, that almost every single company lived in fear of being criticized and potentially indicted for, was that, well, is that a job necessity? Imagine a judge saying, well, height is not a job necessity because Muggsy Bogues wasn't tall. Oh, really? So is height a job necessity to the NBA? I would say so. I would say that being tall is a job necessity. One reason the college cartel is so strong is that generally the government doesn't like the idea of simply giving job applicants an IQ test because those have disparate impact. You know, I should wear a shirt in this fall tour, the next fall tour. Blake is going to love this. Bring back IQ tests. What could be more fair than an IQ test? It's not even about where you went to school. Now, schooling can moderately improve your IQ test, your IQ output, moderately. They're fine with requiring an expensive college diploma, even though those also have disparate impact. Why? Honestly, the only reason is that federal bureaucrats like colleges. If we bring back IQ tests, it's much more fair. It's much more equitable. Someone that might not have gone to as good of a school, for example, they might not have gone to Stevenson High School in the suburbs of Chicago. They might have gone on the south side of Chicago, but an IQ test would be able to pluck out that individual that might not have had the same schooling because they might have the raw intellectual firepower and potential. Who could possibly be against IQ tests? Oh, they're against IQ tests because they want to have a credentialing lobby, which actually creates more disparate impact, which is what's hilarious. Requiring an expensive college degree is one of the few requirements companies are allowed to have, even though that definitionally is a disparate impact. So President Trump signing this executive order is one of the great step forwards to get back to a merit-based system. When merit dies, mediocrity inherits the throne. Do you notice? And again, this is a little bit more anecdotal, a little bit subjective, but I think you'd all agree. Do you guys think the country works better, the same, or worse as it did 20 years ago? I mean basic stuff. The ability to go to a bank and get good service. The ability to have a flight on time, to not have your luggage lost. The ability to get a good driver if you want to get in a taxi cab. Do you think the basic necessities that keep a society going are getting better, worse, or they've stayed the same? Power outages are more common today. I think our quality of how we actually treat people in hospitals has declined rapidly. I'm afraid we're slowly slipping into a culture of mediocrity, and that is what happens when you no longer have a culture of meritocracy. And here is the sad but brutal truth. When you have a culture of meritocracy, sometimes the room is not going to look like Angelina Jolie's Christmas card, as Bill Maher would say. It's not going to look where everyone is different in pigmentation. It might be, or it might not be. You see, when you have merit, you don't know what the end result is going to be. It could be a bunch of Asians. It could be a bunch of Nicaraguans. It could be a bunch of Scots. And it's irrelevant because we actually don't care. And that is the point. We don't care about the melanin complexion of the end result. We care, can that team, can that unit, are they able to do awesome stuff? And forced diversity via disparate impact has been slowly suffocating excellence. We are standing against it. And President Trump going against disparate impact. It's being ignored by all the legacy media. Honestly, that's okay. And all of you should be applauding and celebrating because it's a massive leap to get us back to our birthright of being an excellent country.